Unexplained rules haunt a rural Arkansas school. 7 sinister secrets revealed to students. Emily's heart raced as she walked through the creaky old schoolhouse door of Clearwater Middle School. The air felt heavy, thick, a warning whisper on the wind. She'd traded in her city life for this eerie calm, but something bubbling beneath the surface screamed that this was no peaceful place. The hallways were lined with faded portraits of stern-faced ancestors. Their eyes seemed to follow her every step. Her classmates buzzed about, but their laughter rang hollow, like the echoes of lost souls trapped in the ancient structure. In the library, she found the dusty old rulebook that would shatter the illusion of safety. It was hidden behind a stack of tattered novels, adorned with a faded "Do Not Open." Emily's fingers trembled as she brushed the dust off the cover. Inside were unexplainable rules, bizarre and twisted, hinting at punishments that didn't belong to a school. Disappearances, dark punishments, and muted screams. Each page she turned felt like she was unveiling layers of dread. Reading about the Watcher gave her chills. Who or what? The first sinister element struck when Emily confronted her new friends with the book. They crowded around her, eyes wide with a mix of fascination and fear. When she read aloud, their faces changed from intrigue to horror. It was like a switch flipped. A girl muttered, "We shouldn't talk about that." She quickly glanced towards the window. Emily felt a cold sweat creeping down her spine. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. The air around them thickened, unsettled whispers chasing after Emily and her friends. They had heard muffled rumors at school about students vanishing, one by one, each disappearance linked to a broken rule. That day, the bell tolled ominously, a foreboding sound that sent chills through the crowd. Emily saw her favorite teacher's face twist into something unrecognizable when a student timidly admitted to being late. The teacher's gaze was a blade, sharp and unforgiving. The woods behind the school loomed like waiting giants, encased in swirling fog. Emily swore she heard laughing, or was it crying? The whispers swirling in her mind felt like they were pulling her close, warning her to obey, to stay far from the secrets buried under the veil of age-old trees. But her heart screamed to fight back, to confront whatever nightmare lurked beneath the surface. As they edged closer to the woods, shadows danced and flickered among the trees, grotesque figures emerging amidst the fog. Emily's breath caught. "We shouldn't be here," a friend whispered, voice trembling. The fog surged like a predator, swallowing the fading light. The trees bent, secrets aching to be freed. Suddenly, a rustling erupted from the underbrush, accompanied by a chilling voice like ice. "You shouldn't be here. The rules are meant to keep you safe." Emily's heart slammed against her ribs. The trees swayed ominously, closing in, the air thick with a creeping dread. What had they stumbled into? She realized with horror that uncovering the truth about the Watcher and its connection to the Keepers held the key to their survival. Or would it lead them deeper into the darkness? The eerie voice lingered like a heavy fog around Emily and her friends. The rustling had stopped, but the trees still felt alive, their gnarled branches stretching out as if to ensnare them. Emily's mind raced. What did that mean? Who were the Keepers? She glanced at her friends. Their faces had drained of color. The fear in their eyes matched the knot tightening in her stomach. "Maybe we should go back," she suggested, trying to sound strong. But deep down, she knew running away wouldn't erase the chilling words that had just been spoken. The woods pulsed with an uncanny energy, urging them deeper inside. "Just a little further," whispered Marcus, the bravest among them, or perhaps the most reckless. "We have to see what's going on." Reluctantly, Emily followed, her heartbeat echoing in her ears. They moved cautiously, each step crunching softly over damp leaves and twigs. Every shadow felt like a haunting presence, their faces alight with uncertainty. Suddenly, Jenna let out a yelp. "Did you see that?" she whispered, pointing toward a massive oak tree. There, carved into its trunk, was a symbol, a swirling pattern that seemed to pulse with a life of its own. The symbol felt familiar, yet wrong. "What is this?" Emily dared to reach out, fingers brushing the surface. As she did, a cold wind swept through the clearing, carrying with it the whispers of lost voices. She recoiled, dropping her hand. "What did you feel?" Marcus asked, eyes wide. It's like it was speaking to me," Emily stammered, shaking her head to clear the eerie sensation that clung to her mind. "That's it. You were chosen," he said with a wild grin that masked the fear buried deep within. "You're gonna find out what this place is hiding, right?" Emily felt the weight of his expectation. What if he was right? What if she was drawn to uncover the school's dark secrets? But at what cost? "Guys," Jenna interrupted, fear gripping her voice, "we shouldn't mess with this. What if it's cursed?" A sharp crack echoed behind them. Everyone turned, muscles tensing. Emily's breath hitched in her throat. A figure stepped into the fading light, cloaked in a dark shroud, obscuring its face. "What do you seek?" Emily's stomach dropped, panic clawing at her throat. We were just exploring," she stuttered, feeling small under the figure's gaze, though it was hidden beneath the shadows. The figure beckoned with a slow, deliberate gesture, pointing toward the depths of the woods. "The answers lie within. Hear the rules or face the consequences." A shiver of dread racked Emily's body. Was this the Watcher? She hesitated. Every fiber of her being screamed to flee. But in that moment, a veil of fascination wrapped around her. There was a terrible allure in the darkness, a magnetic pull demanding to be explored. One of her friends broke out from the group. "Let's go! We have to know!" Before Emily could register the decision, a rush of movement surged ahead, leading them deeper into the woods. Her friends were ready to risk it all for answers. But was this what they truly wanted? What if the rules they'd read about were not to protect them, but to keep something else at bay? As they strayed further into shadows, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that they were not just uncovering secrets, they were awakening something. Would the truth set them free or trap them forever? The air grew denser, the darkness colder. Emily's heart raced as the trees closed in around them, their rustling growing louder. The haunting whispers filled her ears again, swirling and echoing. The rules, they must be obeyed, or pay the price. And as the figure vanished into the trees, a dreadful realization settled over Emily. They were no longer in control. The woods had their own wicked purpose, and the price for disobedience loomed closer. What awaited them in the shadows? And as they pressed on, would they still have a choice in the end? Emily's heart thundered in her ears as her friends forged ahead, swallowed by the increasing darkness. Each step felt heavier, as if the forest itself were pulling her back, each shadow whispering warnings she struggled to ignore. "Wait, guys, we shouldn't," she called after them, voice cracking under the weight of dread constricting her throat. But Marcus, Jenna, and the others were beyond her reach, driven by a mixture of adrenaline and foolish curiosity. The deeper they went, the fewer traces of light penetrated the canopy above. A thick fog slithered around their ankles, wrapping them in an icy embrace. Every rustle in the underbrush made Emily jump, her fear clawing at her insides. "Look!" Jenna shouted, pulling Emily's attention toward yet another symbol carved into the bark of a nearby tree. It was different from the first. This one was jagged, with sharp edges that looked as though they had been etched with desperate hands. "What do they mean?" Jenna's voice trembled, glancing back toward Marcus, who approached with an eagerness that unnerved Emily. "They must mean something," Marcus said, his gaze unwavering, "like rules or some kind of warning. But what if we're not supposed to be here?" Emily argued, feeling a chill as the pit of her stomach twisted. "Or maybe we're meant to figure it out," he shot back, his eyes glinting with excitement. The smile slipped from his face as they all heard it, a low hiss, followed by an echo of laughter that sent shivers dancing down Emily's spine. "Please, let's go back," Emily pleaded, grasping Jenna's arm tightly. She could feel a sense of foreboding settling over them, thick as the fog around their feet. "Not until we know," Marcus insisted, stepping closer to the trees that seemed to pulse with a life of their own. "We can't back down now." But Emily knew that they were not just wandering into a mystery, they were stepping into a trap. She felt the weight of history hanging in the air, a force older than any of them. Something restless waited in the dark, maybe even angry at their presence. "Guys, seriously," Emily's voice was urgent, slicing through the tension. Then the woods went still. Not a whisper, not a rustle, just silence. The silence was worse, crawling like icy fingers over her skin. Then, from the depths of the trees, came a soft rustling, followed by a voice, a murmur laced with malice. "You shouldn't have come," it taunted, reverberating around them. "What was that?" Jenna gasped, her grip tightening on Emily's arm. "It was just the wind," Marcus said, though his bravado faltered. Emily could see it in his eyes. He was just as scared, if not more. But with every heartbeat, the air grew thicker, suffocating. The sound of their breaths seemed like an intrusion, out of place in the pregnant silence. Something shifted behind them. A shadow darted among the trees. Emily spun, eyes straining to see. Nothing, just more shadow. "Maybe we should really go now," Jenna whispered shakily, her voice cracking under the pressure. But before they could even respond, a figure stepped out, emerging from the deeper darkness. The shape loomed, cloaked in shadow, just like the first figure. This one, however, was different, more menacing, more intense. The air crackled with anticipation. The figure's presence seemed to drain the warmth from their bodies. "Did you not hear?" it boomed, voice echoing as if a chorus of voices took flight. "The rules, they must be spoken, or face the keeper of the woods." Emily's heart sank. The weight of implication was suffocating. They hadn't just wandered into something unknown. They had trespassed into a territory where ancient forces guarded secrets meant to stay buried. She glanced at her friends, each face pale, each expression swirling with terror and disbelief. "Run!" Emily screamed, pushing past them as adrenaline spiked through her veins. But even as she scrambled, she felt the darkness closing in, wrapping around her shoulders like an icy grip. There was no escaping whatever had awakened behind them, no unknowing choice left to make. The woods were alive, and now they were the hunted. What awaited them on their path to? Escape? Would they outrun the keeper, or was their fate already sealed within the shadows? Emily bolted through the underbrush, cold sweat slicking her palms as she darted past gnarled branches that clawed at her like skeletal fingers. Behind her, the heavy footfalls of her friends broke through the petrified silence, mirroring her panic. "This way!" she shouted, unsure if her voice could reach them over the rising cacophony of dread. "The symbols! We need to remember!" Marcus gasped, struggling to keep pace, his determination faltering. Each step they took seemed to pull them deeper into the dark belly of the forest, where the air turned thick and cloying, each breath heavy with the weight of something sinister lurking just beyond. Jenna, breathless and panicked, stumbled. Her scream echoed as she fell, the fog swirling around her like a sentient being. Emily hesitated, torn between instinct and loyalty. But fear gripped her heart tighter than any promise of friendship. "Get up! We have to go!" With a trembling hand, Jenna pushed off the ground, and they continued their desperate flight. But as they sprinted, the dark figure loomed behind them. It moved silently, like a shadow stretched beyond reality. No matter how fast they ran, they could feel its presence coiling tighter around them. "Where do we go?" Jenna cried, her eyes wide with fear, almost pleading. "The clearing!" Marcus yelled, his voice strained as he pointed ahead into the enveloping dark. Emily focused on his words, pushing her legs harder, pumping adrenaline through her veins like wildfire. But the keeper, it seemed, had eyes everywhere. She could feel it watching, waiting for the moment they would falter. Then came a rustling, louder than before, a growl that vibrated in her very bones. The forest shifted, trees bending and twisting, as though responding to a command only the unseen creature could give. It was not just a chase, it was a game, and the stakes were their lives. "Don't look, just keep moving," Emily shouted, but her fight against the terror was weakening. A sudden chill swept through the air, cutting through her warmth like a knife, freezing time for a moment that stretched painfully long. They erupted into a small clearing, an unnatural stillness enveloping them. Emptiness. Panic stole their breath. Shadows danced around the edges, flickering like the flames of a dying fire. Emily turned slowly, catching glimpses of her friends. Fear painted their faces like a canvas of despair. "This is wrong," Jenna whispered, the quaver in her voice echoing in the haunting silence. "Something feels off." With shock, Emily realized the symbols had begun to glow faintly, each one illuminating the evening air with an eerie light, pulsing like a heartbeat. As they focused on them, a language, not words, but intent, swirled in the fog, pulling them, inviting them. Suddenly, Marcus stepped forward, entranced. "Do we have to read them?" he murmured, eyes glossing over as if under a spell. "No!" Emily screamed, reaching for him, but a hand gripped her shoulder, cold and unyielding, sending a fresh wave of terror coursing through her. She spun and found herself face to face with the keeper. His features were obscured, but glowing symbols danced across his twisted visage, revealing that the shadows clung to him like living clothing. "You have come to learn the rules, or to perish among them." His voice was smooth, a chilling song that reverberated in the clearing. "What do you want from us?" Jenna shrieked, voice cracking. The fog began to coil closer, eager to consume them. The keeper's laughter, deep and haunting, resonated through the woods, circling around them like blood in a predator's veins. "You must choose," he said, pointing to the glowing symbols. "Speak their names, or forfeit your souls to the forest." In that instant, dread settled like a stone in Emily's stomach. The weight of the choice hanging in the air felt impossibly heavy. What lay behind the symbols? Were they truly the key to escaping, or were they just another trick? As the air warped and thinned around them, one question loomed larger than ever. Could they break the ancient curse, or had they already sealed their fate? Emily's heart raced as she stared up at the keeper, icy dread coursing through her veins. His eyes, if they could be called that, glinted in the dim light, pools of darkness that promised nothing but despair. The symbols around them pulsed like a dark heartbeat, eerily coordinating with the shivers creeping up her spine. "Choose wisely," he snarled, his voice a blend of silk and steel, a reminder that every second mattered. Failure leads to a fate worse than death. Jenna clutched Emily's arm, panic flaring in her wide eyes. "What if we can't remember them?" she whispered, her voice barely audible, tremors shaking it like leaves in a storm. Emily shook her head, pushing against the fear trying to swallow her. "We have to try," she said. "We can't just give up." Marcus stood transfixed, his gaze locked on the swirling symbols. Maybe if we say them at the same time, it'll be like a ritual, a spell of some sort," he suggested, his voice reverberating with strange conviction. "Ritual?" Jenna echoed, her lips trembling. "More like a suicide pact." The keeper chuckled softly, an unsettling sound that echoed through the clearing. "You underestimate what it means to challenge the forest's power. Unite your voices, or the forest will devour you one by one." Emily glanced around, the trees looming like spectators to their fate. The dread prickled at her skin. She pulled Jenna closer, urgency fueling her words. "We have to remember something, anything. The symbols are here for a reason. They have to mean something. Focus." A moment hung thick in the air as Emily tried to recall her studies from the ancient texts they had pored over, searching for clues hidden among the chaos. There was something about a guardian. No, the keeper, Marcus muttered, "A protector of the woods. The symbols, they're binding spells." "Binding spells?" Jenna gasped. "Yes, they could bind him to his own rules. If we say them correctly, we might trap him." The keeper's laughter echoed around them, dangerous and taunting. "Foolish children, you think you can control me? Speak then. Fear will only tighten the noose around your necks." The moment stretched, thick with anxiety. Each tick of the second hand felt like a countdown to doom, and Emily felt the ground shifting beneath her feet. A sweat bead trickled down her temple as she fought for clarity. "Let's do it," Marcus urged, voice rising with desperate hope. "On 3! They hesitated, stealing glances at one another. In the depths of their shared fear, they found a fleeting flicker of courage. 1, 2, 3! They shouted the symbols in unison, pushing their voices through the fog. It felt like casting a fragile spell into the thickening darkness. Hruza, Tolfrin, Nistar. As the names hit the still night air, the clearing erupted. The symbols tore free from the earth, writhing and dancing around them like nervous fireflies. The keeper's laughter turned to rage, face twisted as the air crackled with energy. "No!" he cried, his symbols flickering angrily, blinking out one by one. "You have dared to learn, and now you will pay." The forest responded, trees shrieking as if in pain, roots thrashing upwards, reaching hungrily for their ankles. The fog thickened, a frenzied beast made to swallow them whole. "What's happening?" Jenna shrieked as she struggled to free herself from the grasping roots. "Hold on!" Emily yelled, fighting against the darkness closing in. The symbols flickered on the ground, and she felt a surge of energy pulse through her, instinctively calling for more names. Somehow they had awakened something within the forest.
Keep going! We can't stop!" But a chilling silence fell, and even the keeper's anger faded into a suffocating hush. The symbols, faint and flickering, began merging into one, forming something monstrous. Their eyes widened in horror as the symbol blazed a blinding light, illuminating the keeper's form, warping it into something grotesque. A creature of shadow filled with terror and fury. "Embrace the darkness, or become a part of it," he warned, the air growing thick with despair. Emily felt the cold closing in, and in that moment she knew what she had to do. But what that meant, and whether it would save them or seal their fates, was a gamble she couldn't comprehend. "We have to push through," she shouted, wondering if she had just doomed them all. The branches creaked ominously, eager to claim their souls, tightly restraining their escape. As the light consumed their surroundings, her mind raced. What new horrors awaited them if they refused to embrace the darkness? A pounding dread set against the unfamiliar surge of power coursing through them. Who would have to pay the price? With a stray thought echoing through Emily's mind, one truth stood painful and bold. With one last effort, she lunged toward the swirling shadows, desperate to forge a new path before it was too late. What shadowy truths awaited them in the heart of the darkness? And would they find a way to break the curse, or would they willingly join the Keeper in his torment? The moment Emily lunged into the swirling shadows, a pulse of energy surged around her. It felt almost alive, an electric current that shot through her body, wrapping around her like a vice. The darkness shot fragments of memories, hurtling her back to the ancient texts she had studied. The Keeper's threat echoed in her ears, doubt gnawing at her, even as her resolve grew stronger. "Follow me!" she screamed, forcing herself deeper into the mass of shadows. Marcus and Jenna were close behind, fear pushing their legs forward, but she could sense the hesitation lingering in their hearts. They obscured her vision. The tangled roots whipped around, snapping at their ankles like hungry snakes. Each bite felt like ice, yet she pressed forward, a primal instinct urging her onward. The symbols glowed in an eerie hue, illuminating the forest briefly, revealing glimpses of horror. A twisted tree, its bark peeling like the skin of a beast, arms of shadows reaching out. "Emily!" Marcus gasped, his voice cracking in terror as he tripped. She turned just in time to see the shadows pull him down, dragging him into their depths, yanking him away like a fallen leaf caught in a whirlpool. Panic gripped her chest, and a scream clawed its way up her throat. "Let him go!" she cried, but her words vanished into the monstrous murmur of the forest. Jenna struggled to keep her footing, her chest heaving in panic. "We can't lose him! We can't let it take Marcus!" But a chill gripped not only her limbs, but deep in her heart. It wasn't just Marcus who was at risk. Doom loomed over all of them. "Look, the symbols!" Emily shouted, a flicker of inspiration glinting in her mind. She couldn't let fear consume her. It was madness, but they needed those names, needed to articulate the binding ritual. They needed to break the Keeper's grasp. Emboldened by adrenaline, she forced her trembling voice to rise above the chaos. "Hruza! Talfrin! Nistar!" Their resonance fought back against the darkness, and Emily felt the ground respond. Eerie winds began howling through the trees, a symphony of spirits singing and suffering. The swirling shadows reacted, twisting painfully, as if writhing in agony from their invocation. "Again!" Jenna urged, her voice trembling. "Say them again!" "Hruza! Talfrin! Nistar!" they shouted together, their voices blending into a primal chorus. The symbols shimmered, brightening the suffocating darkness around them. With each repetition, the shadows flickered, momentarily revealing the spectral faces of lost souls trapped within, a tapestry of torment woven into the fabric of the forest. "Feel it!" Emily shouted, letting the raw energy consume her. "We have to will it into existence."
The shadows recoiled. The twisted forms within them roared in protest, revealing visions of what awaited them. Endless pain, despair lingering just beyond the veil. Emily's heart raced, tearing through her. How could she save Marcus when her own spirit was faltering? But then she remembered. A flash of light sparked in her mind. The keeper had said fear would tighten the noose. They had to harness their anger, their fear, and channel it into strength. "Let it out, Jenna," she screamed, clenching her fists. "Use everything you've got." With every ounce of will, the three of them shouted the names again, louder, each word carved from the depths of their souls. The darkness rumbled, a furious beast in pain. Shadows flickered, and Emily felt a tug at her side. It was Marcus battling his way back, clawing at the tendrils that sought to drag him further into oblivion. "Emily," he managed to gasp, face pale, eyes wide with sheer terror. "Hold on," she cried, reaching out, desperate to grab him. The moment stretched, suspended in time, a fleeting chance against the fate that sought to claim him. And just as she thought she might reach him, the keeper's roar thundered through the clearing. "You meddling children! You dare rise against me?" The energy around them crackled wildly, branches quake as the keeper unleashed his wrath. Emily was sure they were on the brink of being swallowed. Everything was closing in, even as the names they chanted carved through the darkness. "Push! Push!" Jenna's voice broke through the chaos, a rallying cry. Emily poured every bit of her energy into those words, into their unity. This was not just a desperate gamble, it was a fight for survival. The darkness loomed larger, throbbing with fury as they shouted the last names. But doubt crept in once again as the keeper materialized, more monstrous than before. "You think you can stop me? This is merely the beginning." With a final deafening roar, the forest trembled as the very roots twisted, creeping toward them like malevolent hands. What would happen if they couldn't finish the ritual? What if the keeper reversed it? "Emily!" Marcus yelled, terror etched in his features, and she realized the next step would cost them everything. Was their lives worth this gamble? As the shadows converged, she braced for the unknown and took one more step into the abyss, ready to confront the keeper and pay whatever price was necessary. Emily felt the weight of the keeper's presence bearing down like a crushing wave. The root tendrils slithered closer, whispering sinister promises of despair. Shadows morphed, writhing into grotesque shapes that loomed over Marcus, drawing him further from reach. "Marcus, keep fighting!" she yelled, tears brimming. The desperation clawed at her throat. She had to act. Before she could think, Emily lunged forward, a single spark of defiance igniting within her. "Hruza! Tolfrin! Nistar!" The names burst out, tinged with an edge of anger. The keeper roared in rage, the sound reverberating through the clearing, raw and primal. "You toy with forces beyond your understanding. This ends now." Waves of darkness surged, and a cold wind swept through the trees, chilling Emily to the bone. She gasped, her breath visible in the frosty air. Marcus's face was a mask of desperation. "Emily!" Marcus's voice rose. The shadows twisted around him, like serpents coiling tighter. She could feel his struggle against them, an echo of her own fear. "Channel it! Channel the fear!" Jenna screamed, suddenly beside Emily, her face pale and determined. The solid ground beneath them pulsed rhythmically, as if responding to their fear. Emily placed her hand on the ground, feeling the energy coursing through the roots. A flicker of hope lit in her. If they could weave the names together, they could form a protective circle. "Follow my lead," she shouted to Jenna, her voice strong against the chaos. "Hruza! Tolfrin! Nistar!" they cried together.
The pulsing shadows recoiled, producing shrieks that tore through the air like blades. The keeper's body twisted, fury igniting his monstrous form. The forest seemed to hold its breath. For just a moment, the darkness faltered. "Once, twice, 3 times the names shall ring," Emily invoked. "You shall not take him." The words thrashed violently against the shadows. A thin sliver of light began to suffuse the darkness, a fragile salvation amid despair. The symbols glinted like stars within the blackness, swirling around like fireflies. "Marcus, hold on! We're almost there!" The shadows whirled with new-found ferocity. They darted toward Emily, hungrily snapping at her heels, sharp murmurs filling her ears, dark promises of failure and agony. "Say them again," Jenna urged, sweat beading on her forehead. "Kruza, Tolfrin, Nistar!" Their voices intertwined into a haunting melody, rising higher, mixing with winds that keened through the branches, pulling energy from the very fabric of the cursed forest. Suddenly, everything froze. Silence weighed heavily around them. The keeper's face narrowed into a twisted smirk. "You think you're powerful? Perhaps you have forgotten. I own this darkness. I will consume you whole." Immense shadowy claws lunged, cutting toward Emily and Jenna. Panic surged, a scream clawed up Emily's throat. "I can't lose them! I won't!" she gasped. She felt the world spinning, her heart pounding in sync with the thrumming of shadows. Now or never. "Together!" Jenna clasped Emily's arm tightly, their souls igniting with shared determination. "Kruza, Tolfrin, Nistar!" they called, now merging their fear with empowerment, pouring every ounce of rage into the chant. As shadows lunged, that spark ignited into a fierce blaze. The names erupted, weaving a bright thread through the pitch-black chaos. With an explosion of light, the shadows buckled, shrieked, and began to retract. Emily felt the rush of power surge through her, lighting their path. "We can! We must! Rise!" But just as the shadows fell back, uncertainty gnawed at her heart. Was this real? Would it hold? Then...
"This isn't just my domain, it's also your fear," it hissed, slinking forward. The shadows warped, forming an unrecognizable visage. Her own face twisted in anguish. "Emily, it's not real!" Jenna shouted, her voice barely cutting through the rising swell of terror. "Fight it!" Each pulse of fear sent icy needles down Emily's spine, freezing her thoughts into chaos. Fate and reality blurred. The keeper surged forward, casting grotesque versions of their worst nightmares. Scenes from their childhood, regrets and failures crumbling in front of them. The laughter echoed louder, drowning out their chant. "Please," she whispered, obtaining strength from the flicker of hope. She could not break. Suddenly, the ground beneath them cracked open, splintering with ominous intent, revealing blackness that seemed to call for her. She collapsed to her knees, feeling the weight of despair wrapping tighter around her chest. "Emily, come on! You're strong! Remember the memories, the light!" Marcus's words rang through her like an electric jolt. It clicked. The memories weren't just shadows, they were her strength. "Rutha, Tolfrin, Nistar," she bellowed, pulling every good memory, every laugh shared, every moment of strength into her core. The light pulsed brighter, fighting against the tide of despair. But the keeper, unyielding, lurched forward again, its laughter rising, the shadows thickening. "You resist so valiantly, but I will show you what fear truly means." As Emily and Jenna surged together as one, the darkness quaked and the world around them flickered. The keeper's growl swelled, drowning out their voices. But then, in the confined space of the encroaching darkness, a whisper emerged. It swirled through the air, caught on the very wind that carried nightmares. What if you were never meant to win? Everything froze. Breath hitched. Emily's heart raced. Was this true? The shadows pulled closer, clinging to her skin. She had to know. "What do you mean?" she screamed, desperately seeking understanding, even while the darkness clawed at her mind. As the keeper grinned wider, the forest trembled with anticipation. What sinister truth awaited them next? Would the answer shatter her resolve, or would it illuminate a path she never expected? The whispers danced in the air, a taunting melody that pricked at Emily's sanity. "You think this is fear? No, this is just the beginning." The keeper's voice slithered into every crevice of her mind, replacing defiance with doubt. What if this was futile? Against her will, images of darkness flooded her thoughts, of Marcus trapped, of Jenna slipping away. She felt the cacophony of her own memories twisting into sinister echoes, dragging her toward despair. "No!" she howled, drawing strength from the flickering light between her and Jenna. "We keep fighting!" With renewed vigor, Emily rallied, her voice sharp against the consuming shadows. "Hrutha, Tolfrin, Nystar!" Each name became a battle cry, tearing through the suffocating darkness. The shadows recoiled, but the keeper only laughed, amusement threading through its menacing growl. It was no longer shifting faces that advanced, but monstrous shapes, rising and spitting darkness. Each twisted form was bent on terror, dragging phantoms of regret that almost felt tangible. Emily stumbled, almost collapsing under the weight of haunting memories. Images of her childhood, her father's disappointment, the friends she'd lost, attacked her, nipping at her heels and gnawing at her heart. She gritted her teeth, struggling to catch her breath. "Remember the light," she whispered, forcing herself to recall those moments of joy, the laughter of summer days, nights spent with friends, and the reassuring warmth of love. "Emily," came Marcus's voice again, steady despite the chaos. "You need to believe. We can break this." "Together!" Jenna cried, extending her palm, shimmering with hope. "Hold on tight." The girls gripped each other's hands fiercely, their power intertwining, spilling out into the darkness like liquid fire. "Together," they echoed. As their voices crescendoed, beams of concentrated light erupted around them, illuminating the edges of the void. The keeper shrieked, a sound that shattered the world's stillness. Shadows writhed and flailed, desperate to hold on, but the light pressed in, forcing the darkness to retreat. But the keeper emerged, relentless, reforming to its towering, grotesque self. "You think light can drive me back. It only makes my feast richer." With a swift movement, the ground beneath Emily cracked again, a gaping chasm forming as the keeper reached its elongated arms toward them. Emily's heart thundered in her chest, panic rising as she felt the pull of despair deepening. She could sense the keeper's hunger, could feel the gnashing of teeth ready to consume them whole. "Emily, resist!" Jenna shouted, her own light flickering but unyielding. Emily squeezed her eyes shut, envisioning the flickering sparks of hope, intermingled with colors of love and kindness. She saw familiar faces, her mother's warm smile, Marcus's unwavering support, and Jenna's fierce spirit. The thought ignited a blaze inside her, fierce and raw. "No!" she screamed, forcing her eyes open.
With every ounce of strength, she reached deep within, accepting the pain, but not letting it define her. With a roar, she pulled the light from these memories, releasing it in a brilliant explosion. But just as she thought they had a chance, the Keeper's eyes bore into hers, dark and fathomless. Emily's blood ran cold. The air thickened. An overwhelming sense of dread squeezed her throat. The dark forms began to morph again, this time revealing secrets, each one a brutal reminder of buried fears and choices long regretted. "Stop!" she cried, but the shadows didn't relent. They poured forth, swirling like mist, wrapping around her tightly. "It's time to confront who you really are, Emily," the Keeper sneered, a terrifying glint in its countless eyes. The village around them trembled, the echoes of despair and truth merging into a horrifying cacophony that threatened to break her spirit. With the Keeper's words lingering menacingly, a new wave of shadows surged forward. Emily braced herself, understanding the gravity of what was coming. "Will you fight the truth?" it whispered, the shadows thickening. As another crack echoed in the ground, and the Keeper's laugh turned to a sinister crescendo, Emily prepared for the fight of her life. Would she stand firm against the tumult of her own nightmares, or would she succumb to the revelation of her darkest truths? The final moment approached, and with her heart pounding, she took a deep breath, ready to plunge into the depths of horror that awaited her. Emily gripped Jenna's hand tightly as the sprawling darkness twisted around them, every shadow beckoning her to succumb to despair. The Keeper loomed closer, its form rippling with malevolence, twisted faces of her fears and failures spiraling around it. Screeches echoed as the world shifted beneath them, a pendulum of dread. "No!" she shouted, forcing her voice against the encroaching void. "We will resist!" With every ounce of willpower, she summoned the flickers of light buried within, the laughter shared with friends, the warmth of her mother's embrace, the fierce battles fought alongside Jenna and Marcus. Those moments were power, not weakness. "You cannot take that from us." Then, for a fleeting heartbeat, Emily saw it, a burst of shimmering light preceding determination. Marcus's unwavering gaze gave her strength. "We have the truth within us," he yelled, drawing nearer despite the chaos that swarmed. "Remember those memories. Harness them," Jenna cried, her face illuminated with a fierce resolve, eyes burning with the shared dreams of friendship and strength. Together they focused, channeling their deep-rooted belief in one another, as if crafting a shield against the Keeper's dark insistence. They could see it, the light flaring, shaking off the shadows. "Ruza! Tolfren! Nistar!" they shouted once more, their chant defiant, resonating through the murky air. Each name felt like a brushstroke against the night, creating an aura that pushed back against the darkness. The Keeper's laughter morphed, a mix of disbelief and anger. "You think mere words can stave off the hunger of the abyss," it shrieked, curling into a vortex of shadow that threatened to swallow them whole. But the trio stood firm. "We know who we are. Nothing can change that," Emily cried, feeling a surge of energy as the ground beneath them hummed, fiercely alive with the echoes of their defiance. With every syllable they spoke, tendrils of light sliced through the gathering shadows, illuminating lost faces trapped in the forest's grip, urging those that fought to reach for freedom. In that moment they felt a collective pulse of hope. The colors surged, crossing paths, intertwined into a radiant shockwave. With a roar, the keeper surged forward, darkness escaping from its jaws like smoke, desperate to reclaim what it deemed its feast. "You think you can escape?" "No!" Emily's voice rang clear, unyielding, a beacon of unity as the light formed a barrier around her and her friends. "Our light is stronger than your darkness." Suddenly, laughter erupted, light erupted. Like a volcano bursting forth, it flung free.
The shadows, clearing the space around them. The symbols from the trees began to glow brighter, harmonizing with the growing light that threatened the keeper. "Together!" Jenna screamed, locking elbows with Emily and Marcus. In a final act of defiance, with breaths carried by sheer determination, they shouted the names one last time. "Hruza! Tulfrin! Nistar!" The explosion of sound vibrated through the forest, the names interweaving into a web of light that enveloped the keeper, ripping at the darkness with fierce urgency. The sprawling shadows shrieked, clawing at their edges, twisting and thrashing violently as the symbols absorbed their essence, turning their darkness into a brilliant glow. "Fight! Fight for your truth! Fight for each other!" Emily urged, tears streaming down her cheeks, adrenaline propelling her heart against the weight of despair. With each pulse of the light, fragments of the past rose from the shadows, lost moments of joy illuminating the clearing in bursts of color. Emily felt something shift deep inside her. The truths she feared became her arsenal, empowering her spirit. The keeper screeched, unraveling beneath the intensity of their collective energy. "No! What are you doing? You cannot!" With one emphatic push, they combined their voices and hearts, releasing a powerful surge of energy that encased the keeper. It roared, a cacophony of fury blending with terror, before finally collapsing into a storm of shadows spiraling away from them. Breathless, Emily watched as the essence of the keeper dissolved into wisps of smoke that vanished into the night, leaving behind only whispers of shadow. A profound silence filled the space, and then the clearing burst forth in brilliant light, illuminating the forest as it had never been seen before. Did we do it?" Marcus stammered, heart racing, his eyes wide with disbelief. Jenna squeezed Emily's hand, her voice trembling but filled with wonder. "I think we did. We broke the curse." As the three of them stood together, illuminated by the warmth of their triumph, a sudden breeze swept through, carrying laughter, a joyful echo of lost souls finally freed. The lost nightmares that once haunted this forest stood now as mere memories, and Emily felt a lightness in her heart, untethered from the fear that once gripped her spirit. "Let's get out of this place," Marcus said, relief washing over him. "I think we've had enough adventure for a lifetime." As they walked back towards the school, the shadows retreated into the woods, even the sky gleaming brighter as dawn broke. They could hear the gentle rustlings of leaves, whispering a promise of new beginnings. Clearer skies awaited them, laced with the joy of life ahead, free from the clutches of darkness. Together they had faced their fears, and together they had won. That fierce bond of friendship would lead them wherever the road took them next. "Promise me no more lurking in dark woods," Jenna said with a wry smile, relief evident on her face as her laughter danced in the air. "I promise," Emily replied, her heart lighter than it had ever been. "Adventure of this kind? No, thank you," Marcus added, and they all laughed, knowing that this chapter had come to an end. They had survived, they had emerged, and now their future gleamed with endless possibilities. So, dear friends, remember, every light emerges from courage, every truth from togetherness, and as we sway through the shadows, we write our own endings. Now go forth, live fully, and cherish the bonds that truly bind us, for they wield a strength greater than we can imagine. And don't forget, your journey continues here. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories that will spark your imagination. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and share the love. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this thrilling conclusion. And for goodness sake, instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to support the channel and mark your place in the story. Don't wait even one more second. Join the adventure.